Jesus is the answer for the world today.
Hello, family. Pastor Laulu Christian Pentecostal Church, and we are talking today continuously about the holiness of God, and we're in Genesis chapter 18. Now, Genesis chapter 18 is a very interesting chapter. Well, all a lot of chapters are interesting, but here we see that God comes to visit Abraham and Sarah. And we see at the beginning of the chapter that it says specifically, now the Lord appeared to Abraham by the terebinth trees of Mamre in Hebron while he was sitting at the tent door in the heat of the day. So he's sitting there at the heat of the day and he sees three men. And we know that two of the men were angels and one was God himself. And God comes to Abraham, runs to them. And there's a sense of what I like in this chapter that it talks about. There's a sense of urgency. Abraham runs to them to meet them, right? He ran from the tent door to meet them. He says, come, sit with me. Let me give you something to refresh yourselves. And then he runs to Sarah and says, Sarah, hey, prepare some food. Then he runs to his servants and he hurries to bring the food. And I don't know, that was just something that I saw. That I can't tell you the exact reasons why that revelation isn't here yet, but it's just something. So there was a haste, there was a quickness to it when he saw that the Lord had come to visit. And okay, so here God says, hey, where's Sarah? She's like, oh, he's by the tent. And she's in the tent right here. And he says, okay, by this time next year that she's going to have a child. And Sarah laughed and said, so in my old age I'm gonna have a child? And when Abraham's old, and the Bible says she laughed to herself. And the Lord said to Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? And Sarah denied laughing. Here we see grace, because Sarah literally lied to God. And we see grace in the fact that she didn't drop dead instantly, right? Okay, then we continue, and Abraham, and as they were getting ready to leave, Abraham stands to see them off. And God says, hey, shall I hide this thing from Abraham? Since surely he's going to be great, and he will command his household to follow and obey me and do what is right and just. And God says to Abraham that, okay, hey, I've heard the cry of Sodom, and I'm going to go visit it. Sodom and Gomorrah, I'm going to go visit it, and to see if this is really true. Now, we know full well that God is omniscient, right? He knows, right? Okay, but he's speaking to Abraham for Abraham's sake and for our sake as we read this. And he says, okay, so Abraham dares to entreat. Now, we know why Abraham is entreating for Sodom, right? It's not because, oh, Sodom, oh, that city, they're doing horrible things. God, don't destroy them. No, because he says, God, I dare say, if there are 50 righteous in the city, would you destroy it? Because, you are the God. You are God. You're the one. You are just. You do what is right. And it's like, okay, if there are 50, you would not destroy the righteous with the wicked. Because you, the Lord of right and justice, you wouldn't do such a thing. Abraham said, God, this is who you are. This is how you have revealed yourself. And in light of that, I know that this thing, you would not do it, right? And God said, if there are 50, I wouldn't destroy it. So Abraham continues to entreat God. He gets to 45. He gets all the way down to 10. And God says, if I find 10 righteous in the city, I will not destroy it. Now, we know Abraham was entreating God here for the sake of Lot, because we see in the earlier chapters, we see that Lot had chosen to dwell by Sodom and Gomorrah, because he said, oh, those lands are green. That's the best place. Okay, even in that, where something appears like the place to be, or it seems like fruitful and plentiful, we can learn even from that everything, there's a saying that everything that glitters is not gold, right? Okay, because it glitters doesn't mean it's gold, and that's where you should be. But okay, so Abraham is entreating for Lot, for the sake of Lot, and he gets down to 10. And we know the story, right? God says full well that if I find 10, I will not destroy it. But God didn't find 10. In 2 Peter, we see that it talks about Lot and says, Lot, that righteous man, that the works of the city vexed his soul. Now we know full well that Lot wasn't righteous because of anything he did specifically, that he did everything right. But God called him righteous because he believed. Because he believed on the God of heaven, he was considered righteous. And okay, so it vexed his soul. If Abraham had gone down to 1, God would not have destroyed the city. And the thing is, because I see what this resonates with me is in the New Testament when Jesus Christ said that he will leave the 99 for the 1. If it had been just 1. But we see what happens. Abraham goes down to 10. And God says, I will not. And when the angels visited the city, we see the wickedness of the city. And we see that the angels took them out of the city and destroyed it. And as we read this, we're talking about the justice of God. He's just and true. And he would not destroy Lot with the city. What this resonates, or what this shows us about the character of God, about his holy nature in terms of his justice, is that everything what a man sows, he's sure to reap, right? We see here that, God, how do I phrase this? God, he's just different from all of us. He remains true to himself no matter what. And the thing is, when God determines to destroy a thing, to wipe a thing or a people off the face of the earth. So here's the thing. We have this idea that God, how could you? No. God is just. When God determines, not when we see something happen and we don't know the reason why, when we see some natural disaster, some horrible thing occurs and we don't know the reason why. That's not what I'm talking about here. When God determines to wipe a thing or people off the face of the earth, he is just in his doings. And we can be sure that what God did there was just. That the wickedness or whatever it was, God was just in his doings. Because here, when Abraham came to God and said, hey God, you are just, you wouldn't do this thing. God said, you're right. I would not do this thing. So we see that God says, for the sake of 10, if you found 10 righteous, he would not destroy the whole place. So if we see a place that God has determined to destroy, we know that is because there was wickedness and sin rampant in that place. And if they were righteous, they were no longer there. Sorry. So in our lives, let's think about it. When God takes a thing away from us, when we know God took a thing away, whether it's something that we greatly desired or something that, within us, a wickedness within us or nature within us, he's just in his dealings. And it is for our good. When God determines to do a thing and we know it's God that did that thing, we can never question his justice. We can never question his sense of justice, because at the end of the day, before we understand justice, he is justice. He determines what is right, and we follow along in that path. So if he decrees and he declares that a thing is wrong, therefore it is wrong. If he decrees and declares that this thing must go, therefore it must go. And he's just. We can trust, lean, and rely on that. That because he's just, wickedness cannot be found in him, because he is good. Let that be our confidence. Let that be our hope. Not hope like I'm wishing for, no, hope like something I hold dear to. Because I know it's this thing I see. Let that be our faith. That the justice of God will always be true. And we can rest and rely on that. God bless you and have a blessed day.